Hello and welcome back. This is ProTaleDev back with another Dungeon Architect video, and what we're going to be looking at is some of the things I mentioned in the last video at the end. So finishing off the production I've done, and also adding the connections I've done, but we'll be then moving into the disasters that I've started working on, as well as some time related changes to the time manager and the directional lighting. So first of all, let's look at some of these productions. So the production section has a lot of the production for the materials in the game. So that's the mines and the lumberyard so far. And so what we've got here is just a minor changes to the mine is that it's now got an actual model. This model was originally used for the dungeons, but I've changed it to look like the mines because that's what it was, a mine. And so we've also got these little ores on top. This is just to represent the type of ore that you are mining for. So each mine has their own kind of color to them. It'll shine off the light as well. So you got so the black rock, the copper, gold, iron, silver, and steel. So we've also got the iron, which is pink, which is more traditional. Silver, which is white, and of course the last one, which is steel, which is a sort of a greyish, as opposed to the black rock, which is pure black. All of these have their canvases above them, which shows their bars, which is all still working. The code hasn't really changed for these. Everything was already coded in the previous iteration of this game, so ultimately it's all working still. And you have the lumberyard right here, which only has one way in, which needs to be connected, so you might need to plan that out. And then it's just a building surrounded by like broken trees. So that is the production. I might place some in a minute just to show what it looks like. The next thing is that the connection points are now done for the paths. So if something isn't connected to a path specifically, that is a building, it will have this X. All of the buildings have this, not just a production. So all of the houses now have this. All the paths have also changed, so there's like a new material for the path. Don't know if I like it yet, but we'll see. And this is just to connect it all the way through to everything else, so all the shops have it. The next thing I'm going to mention is that the shops have now got extensions to their buildings. So you'll see that this has changed a little bit, so the stand is a little bit more compact and smaller on this first level of shop. Then we enter the next level of shop, which is slightly larger. Lights have not been added yet, but they should be there. And it's just slightly wider. Then you go to the next version, and it's a house with another floor, so it's slightly wider, slightly bigger, and it's got another floor. And then we go into the final version, which is a double, so it's 4 sections, so it's 4 squares put together, and it's 4 total shops together, which indicates it's much bigger. It's more like a shopping district essentially, but you also got 4 points for the paths to connect. This could be a great place to have maybe in center positions, or just to open up connection points in general. It could be cheaper as well. The next thing is the custom dungeon buildings have now been altered to be a little bit more interesting to look at. They also got a color indicator on the front of them. So you can see here that we've got sort of like a little entranceway, a courtyard leading up to the tower. Got this on all of the different custom buildings here, just optimizing those squares, trying to make them more decorative, more interesting. But you can see we got blue, green, and then the last one, the last color indicator is gold. Might change that to be more traditional, like blue, purple, gold, most likely. Then we have the standard dungeon, which has now changed because before we had the mine shaft. Now it's been replaced with a custom little opening area using those dungeon assets that we have. Essentially a doorway that goes into like a hole that you can go down, and the hole is indicated with blue. Then we have the green, and then we have the gold. There is a brand new building. You can see there's a file here called Comfort. This is going to provide things like buildings that are related to security and safety. This will provide a comfort rating to everyone that comes to the park. Without this, their happiness is also going to drop. So before it was just food and water. If they didn't have food or water, their happiness would drop. Now comfort is going to be another aspect to that, and comfort is something that's going to be really important, just as you would expect. What it looks like right now is a bunker. That's what I tried to model it after. It's just a primitive form of a bunker, and essentially what this is going to be is just as you would expect. It is for disasters. So when disasters occur, I want the adventurers to be able to go somewhere, and they're going to go into here. So something I haven't done yet is at the moment they'll automatically run to it, but what I want all buildings to have is an on and off switch, so you can turn them on and off, just for distribution management, but also to make it so that it can build into mechanics related to damage on buildings. So when buildings take enough damage, they'll turn off essentially, and kind of feed that into the same mechanic. And I want to do that for the bunker as well, the emergency bunker. Okay, so let's show the lighting now. So the directional lighting has changed. Instead of what we had before, which if I go into our scripts and show this off now into the code, if I quickly show our time management script. So if we look at our time management script, it's about the same as what it was before. However, you'll notice that I've commented out the hour plus here. So essentially, to save code and to make this code more efficient, this at the moment is playing on every update, and it needed to because it was calculating seconds, minutes, and then converting them to hours, essentially so that we keep track of time. I'm going through all of the scripts, just trying to make them more efficient, less intensive on the game. Because there's going to be so many objects in the scene, I want to optimize it as best I can and where I can. And so this was one of the options I could do, is instead of having it coded in here and ticking every frame a second, so that's 60 frames a second that this is occurring. I want to lower this down massively and essentially reduce this kind of control. And the easiest thing for me to do is to actually animate it. So animation is something I've done in the past to make things easier for some coding aspects, but usually simple things. In this case, I've decided to take the whole timer system and just animate it. So we've got our directional light right here. And if I go into our animation down here, you'll see that we've got a bunch of keyframes, but we've also got a bunch of event triggers right here. What this is going to do is it's calling onto a script, onto a function in a script that's on the object, and that is essentially altering the time and keeping track of hours. That means we completely cut out minutes and seconds, and we don't need to keep track of it every single frame, because this animation is just going to be triggering it when it is necessary. And our code is mostly reliant on the hours. We don't really need the seconds and minutes apart from anything. The only thing we needed it for was to show the time, essentially, to the player, but the seconds isn't important and the minutes really isn't important. So right now this is still in. I could just get rid of this and it wouldn't make any difference now. I just want to show you what I've done, essentially. After this, I'll probably get rid of it. What we got here is we got our functions. So we got our time. So it starts off 6 AM, and then it builds up and builds up all the way through the day, all the way to night and back to 6 AM. And we can control the intensity of the light, the color, and the rotation. That's what we're controlling right now. But there's a lot of other things we can do with this. A lot of fun things we can do with this with just using the animation. We can make the lighting really react how we want depending on the day, and we can always call back onto this animation when we need it in the future. We don't have to manage this at all now. A lot of the lighting controls that are here, that are in the start and end cycle, this code now can pretty much be gone. There isn't really a whole lot needed for this anymore. So this day and night cycle is essentially 12 minutes long. That's how long the animation is that I've done so far. Of course, we can speed that up by speeding the animation up, and we can do that by code easily. So when I'm pressing this speed up button, right now it doesn't work. The rest of the game speeds up, but the time doesn't. But that's easy to change because all we have to do is speed up the animation itself by 3 times or 2 times, whichever button I clicked, and it would speed up the animation as well. So it's just as simple as that. So if I just slowly drag it, you can actually see that the shadows do change. There's a slight rotation. You can see the glare from the sun essentially, and you can see that the lighting changes to be a more yellowy red as the sun sets. It starts to get dark. The intensity of the light changes down to 0.5. it stays dark for quite a while until we get to daytime. Now the global illumination is automatically altering at the moment. I prefer having it on. I know a lot of people are against having it on and build it usually towards the end of a project. However, when I have so many objects, it ends up taking a very long time to build, so I have it build continuously. Just makes things a lot easier when I'm building later on. And so as you can see up here, when we get down to this is when the sun starts coming up. If the global lighting isn't altering, there you go, and this is what it looked like, and we eventually get to the time we want. So now we're down to the last two things that I want to talk about. That is the random spawning script that I've created. We'll pull this over a second. You'll see that we got a random spawning script right here. It's a very simple script at the start. It just chooses a random object within an array, and it just spawns it. Make sure that it's a parent of that object so that it's not just placing it in our scene at random, just randomly in the hierarchy. And it's just making sure it's a parent of the object that it's spawned on. We have these spawners on a bunch of scene objects just to make the scene more different and interesting. So if I go into our scenery and then go into our trees and then go into here, you'll see that it's blank, and that's because I've actually got a cube that demonstrates their current position. If I turn this on, you'll see that this is the locations of our spawns. Just going to turn that off for now. And that is also why in our game there's a lot of blank area. Now if I press play here, it's going to spawn those objects in to those places, and you're going to see a little bit more unique scene, a little bit more detailed. Okay, so once we're in, you can see that the environment has been generated. We've got a few open areas for some of the things that aren't done, but as you can see, we've got our grass here, we've got trees that have spawned in, we've got our buildings here as well. We also have our shadows, which are slowly moving, slowly changing. The next thing I've worked on is the disasters, and what we've got here is while I'm showing off disasters, I've got a bunker, an emergency bunker here that's been placed down. I want to quickly move that round so that the adventurers can go to it, and let's connect that with a path. And then all we need to do is wait until our NPCs go into these buildings and wait for a disaster to occur, just so I can show it off. Okay, so we've just hit a disaster. What you can see here is a fireball of a monster heading right here. This is our young devil. Right now he's destroying adventurers, and that is because that's what he wants to do. So he's going along and he's attacking them. So anyone that spawns here, he's just attacking straight away. At the moment, his only objective is just to destroy adventurers, so the second they spawn in, he's going after them. He also, as you saw there, went straight for the emergency bunker, and that's what I want him to do. So essentially, if there are no adventurers, I want him to go and attack the bunker. Of course, there is no health system yet, so there is no there's no way for them to defend themselves. They're not protected at the moment. That coding hasn't been introduced yet, so... But he is attacking them and killing them, and what we want to do is we want him to attack the emergency bunker. Anyone that's in there he will go after anyway, but essentially we need to have adventurers safe while he's attacking the emergency bunker. So essentially what this disaster is depending on the level. So at the moment you can see at the bottom right we have an icon which is slowly appearing. Right next to it there's one red skull, and that indicates that it's a level 1 disaster. So what's happening here is that at the moment only one monster came out. This is kind of just for testing. Essentially maybe a group will just appear. This will kind of turn into almost like a tower defense, and this is where the comfort aspect comes in. So with more defenses, maybe guard posts, things like that. Essentially the monsters will go after any individual that's in here. As you can see, another one has just spawned. Of course it's got nowhere to go because there are no adventurers, and what's going to happen here is that they should go and attack the emergency bunker if there are no adventurers, which isn't done yet. Any adventurers that are in the bunker they're going to head to anyway, and they're going to try and destroy the bunker. If they destroy the bunker, you're going to receive a massive negative penalty. Essentially it's going to cost you a lot of rating. Temporarily you're going to drop rating. The rating obviously determines how many people come in, so essentially your production of gold is going to drop massively. Losing your emergency bunker will have a massive effect socially on your island. Of course, there's going to be lots of ways to defend against this, so I want to have maybe a temporary turret system. You're going to have guards, guard posts, and potentially things like bigger barracks and things to protect yourself from it, as well as maybe a fighter guild to help maybe pay for things like that. So this is a whole new mechanics that I want to introduce. Of course, they're not the only disaster I have right now. So if I just speed ahead, we should get another disaster once these are done. Okay, we have the other disaster that I've added, and this is the floods disaster. So what's going to happen is, as you can see, the water level is actually rising very slowly, so you have enough time to get your adventurers to the bunker. And once the because this is level 1, all this one does is actually just shut down the docks. So what individuals you have will be the ones that you essentially get gold for, but no one's going to arrive while this disaster is occurring, so you're not actually going to lose any happiness, and you're not actually going to lose any kind of effect. You're just not going to earn any more people. This could be really difficult and a really hard disaster in the very beginning. As you can see, it just ended there, so the water level is now dropping again, so people should be able to come in a minute. This could be a really devastating disaster in the very beginning of the game, because getting those people in is just so important. However, later on in the game, when you're starting to get veterans and people who want to stay and will be staying in your homes, that's not going to be a huge problem. They're going to be essentially coming out of their home back to the dungeons, back to shops and things, and back and forward, and it's not going to be too big of an issue. After these disasters occur, you have a bit of time where you have to wait for new adventurers to come. They won't arrive immediately. As you imagine, after a disaster, it takes some time for them to come back. However, as you can see, there we go, now they're starting to appear again. However, these disasters can be really devastating on higher level. So if we were to get a higher level disaster, which if I just quickly go in the code here, because I've got it set so that it doesn't occur. If we go into our disaster management script right here, which is paralleling our adventurer script, so as you can see, what we got here is when our disaster is not on neutral state, or when it is on neutral state, they can go to the shops, they can do their normal activities. However, if a disaster state is not on neutral, so right down here, what will happen is it will stop all of the previous code and start doing this. The target will switch to a bunker. The adventurers will head to a random bunker. So having one nearby is really crucial, and they'll stop doing whatever they're doing. What we've got in our left script over here is our disaster manager. So essentially what this is let me quickly just expand this. We've got our basic random spawn, so essentially right up here, it'll choose between, at the moment, 1 to 4, so it'll choose between 1 to 4 disaster. At the moment we've only got 2, and that means that every so often it'll choose one that has no disaster. If it does happen to choose one of these, however, what will happen is that it'll choose, let's say, the dungeon. It'll choose a random monster to spawn, and it'll choose a target for the position of where it'll spawn as well, so random dungeon. And it'll choose between this list right here. At the moment we've only got one monster that it can spawn from that list, and it'll just spawn it in the position of the dungeon, but slightly higher than the position of the dungeon because I don't want them to get stuck in the floor. And then it'll start a docks opening after a certain amount of time, presumably when the disaster is over, which is timed in the open dock section right here with end time. We've also got the ocean right here, so the rise ocean, which is just the flood, and this is an animated call, so this is just an animation of the water rising depending on what level it is, so what animation it gets called after a certain amount of time, and the cooldown is essentially when the animation begins to drop right here. And then we have the open docks, which is going to be the standard thing right here. It's just the standard call for when a disaster is ended and visitors can come back in. So let's actually show this disaster. but on a high level. So let's show the flood on its second and potentially third level. So the easiest way for me to show this is right in this screen right here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to show what it looks like. So let's go to move 1, which is our standard level. So if I press this, it animates, it slowly moves up here right now. So if I quickly just go and zoom in, just so it's a little bit easier to see, the water level will rise, and this is just our flood level 1. This will block our dock essentially. And leave it so that it's a little bit easier to see if I just quickly do it like that, but essentially it'll just block the dock. Now let's move it up to level 2. So level 2 is longer, so it's twice as long to go up. However, that gives adventurers a little bit more time, but it is going to be more devastating. So if we speed this up, if I just play it as normal, so we can see this, it's essentially 40 seconds long. It takes 40 seconds to reach its peak disaster. This gives it enough time for adventurers to hide. Obviously they're not doing that because the bunker isn't connected at the moment, so they have no way of getting there. But as you can see, it's already hit the docks, then it starts to spread and go up to here. And then the whole thing floods on this one layer. So essentially the first layer gets swallowed up. However, this second island, part of the island up here, is completely fine. This is where having a multi-layered vertical community village will really pay out, and having really valuable stuff might be really worth having on the highest level you can. Of course, sometimes that might not save you, and so what we got on the final one right here is we got the most difficult one to survive from, the most difficult for in general, and that is the one that lasts 60 seconds before it gets to peak. And it's essentially floods the docks, floods this whole first layer, and then would flood the final layer up here. Of course, we can build our levels to be even higher than that. It's just an example of how high it's going to go at the moment. Don't think I'll do any higher than that though, because at the end of the day, how much am I going to really build onto these maps in vertical fashion? Maybe one more up, we'll see. So what happens here is it floods all the way up. The bunkers will still protect the adventurers, they'll be sealed, so that's the whole point of them. They will absolutely still protect you, but anyone that's trapped out here will die from the ocean. And yes, they do die. So the object, the NPC will get destroyed once it hits the collision that's on the ocean, that's animated with it. And so essentially it's going to kill anyone that's on here. So that is everything. That's everything I've worked on over the week. There's still a lot to do. There's still a lot to do with the disasters. Hopefully I'll work on that more in this week. However, that has been everything so far. I hope you have enjoyed, and this has been ProTaleDev. I'll see you next time.